It is a truth universally acknowledged that the arrival of a wealthy gentleman can disturb the quiet rhythm of a small town. In the countryside of England, life moved slowly, guided by routines, traditions, and expectations. Families gathered not for excitement, but for propriety. Reputation mattered more than happiness, and marriage was considered a necessity rather than a choice. It was into this world that news arrived of a new neighbor, wealthy, reserved, and unmarried. The name Mr. Bingley traveled quickly from house to house. Hope followed it closely, but no one yet knew how deeply this arrival would alter lives, hearts, and beliefs. In the quiet drawing room of Longbourn, Elizabeth Bennet observed the world not with naive excitement, but with a sharp and curious mind. From the very beginning, she noticed how easily first impressions were formed and how dangerously misleading they could be. Mr. Darcy arrived surrounded by admiration, his wealth preceding him like a shadow, yet his manner quickly turned interest into resentment. To Elizabeth, his reserve felt like arrogance, his silence like judgment. She saw him standing apart, measuring the room, and she felt herself measured in return. In contrast, Mr. Bingley's warmth and ease won hearts effortlessly, reminding her how powerful kindness could be when worn without pride. Elizabeth listened, she smiled, she laughed, but she did not forget. Each glance, each overheard remark settled quietly in her memory. What she did not yet know was how deeply these first impressions would shape her heart, nor how pride, once wounded, could disguise itself as certainty, and how prejudice, once formed, rarely announces itself as unfair. As conversations flowed around her, Elizabeth became increasingly aware of how carefully society listened and how quickly it judged. Words were spoken with smiles, yet meaning often hid beneath polite silence. She noticed how glances lingered longer than necessary, how approval and disapproval passed silently between guests. Mr. Darcy's presence continued to weigh upon her thoughts, not because he sought attention, but because he seemed entirely unaffected by it. His composure felt deliberate, almost rehearsed, as though emotion were something to be controlled rather than expressed. To Elizabeth, this restraint confirmed what she already believed. She mistook his reserve for disdain, his silence for indifference. And without realizing it, she allowed her certainty to grow stronger than her curiosity. In that moment, judgment felt easier than understanding, and prejudice, once quiet, began to feel justified. Pride rarely announces itself loudly. More often, it speaks in quiet thoughts and unchallenged assumptions. Elizabeth learned of Mr. Darcy's words almost by accident, yet their impact was deliberate and lasting. That she was considered tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt him. The remark settled deeply within her, not because it was cruel, but because it was careless. It revealed a certainty so effortless, so unquestioned, that it wounded her more than open insult. In that moment, her amusement vanished, replaced by resolve.
Pride answering pride.
And what might have been curiosity hardened into quiet resistance. She smiled still. She spoke politely, but something within her closed. From that point forward, understanding him no longer felt necessary. Time, instead of softening Elizabeth's judgment, only seemed to confirm it. Each new account of Mr. Darcy's behavior arrived already shaped by her certainty. Stories of coldness, of interference, of decisions made without compassion. She listened carefully, not questioning what aligned so perfectly with her belief. It felt easier to trust what she already thought she knew. Easier to accept explanation than uncertainty. Darcy, meanwhile, remained distant, not from indifference, but from restraint. His silence was mistaken for pride once again. Elizabeth no longer observed him with curiosity, but with conviction. And conviction, when left unchallenged, often disguises itself as truth. For, without realizing it, she had stopped seeing the man and began seeing only the story she believed about him. One morning, a letter arrived, simple in appearance, yet heavy with meaning. Elizabeth held it in her hands, uncertain whether curiosity or fear guided her. The words inside were calm, deliberate, and entirely honest. Mr. Darcy admitted his mistakes, acknowledged his pride, and explained actions that she had misunderstood. For the first time, Elizabeth saw the man behind the reputation she had built in her mind. Words she had thought cold became full of sincerity. Sentences she had believed cruel now revealed concern and conscience. Each line challenged her certainty, each paragraph forced reflection. She felt confusion, then surprise, then a gentle shift in her heart. Pride and prejudice, once solid walls, began to crumble quietly. And in that moment, Elizabeth realized how easily judgment had deceived her. In the days that followed the letter, Elizabeth found herself observing Mr. Darcy with new eyes. Every gesture, once assumed arrogant, now seemed measured and thoughtful. Every glance, once perceived as disdainful, now revealed concern. She noticed small acts of kindness, the subtle ways he assisted those around him without seeking recognition. Her heart, which had clung to certainty and pride, began to soften. She realized that her assumptions had been hasty, her judgments incomplete. Where she had expected coldness, she now saw patience. Where she had imagined pride, humility. Slowly, understanding replaced suspicion. Curiosity returned, tempered by newfound respect. And in those quiet moments, Elizabeth sensed that admiration and affection could exist alongside honesty and integrity. Pride and prejudice, once formidable barriers, had quietly softened. Elizabeth and Darcy no longer saw each other through the lens of assumption or pride. They saw truth, the man behind the reputation, the woman behind the wit. Their hearts, once cautious and wary, now open to understanding. Conversations were lighter, smiles warmer, gestures more thoughtful. The world did not change, they did. In the quiet moments, Elizabeth reflected on the lessons learned. That first impressions can deceive. That pride often hides vulnerability. And that love grows not from perfection, but from patience, honesty, and courage to change. And as the evening settled softly over the English countryside, she realized that some truths are discovered not in words, but in observation, reflection, and understanding.